Hey everyone, it's January 19th of 2025, and today we're going to look at chapter 26, talking about the Ottoman Empire and various other stuffs. So here we go. La la la. Alright, so the Ottoman Empire, Turkey. Remember Turkey? They've been having a rough go of it, and so when you compare them with Russia and France and Britain and well, just about everybody else, Germany, they consider, there's actually this thing, this cartoon out there that was talked about how Turkey was the old man of the group, the old man. And so here we have a drawing there where the Sultan, he's got his sword up, his saber up there, and says, who's the old man now? Because we're going to have this new idea called the Tanzimat Reforms. The Tanzimat Reforms is basically the Ottoman Empire saying, okay, we have to totally revamp our entire system because otherwise we're not going to make it. So we've got to become way more European than what we were before. And we're going to start with education. The Tanzimat Reform said, all right, number one, education. All kids go to school for free, and it's compulsory, which means you have to go. And then there's a whole other list right here on the screen. So this is between 1839 and up to 1876, when we're going to have a brand new constitution. And so reorganization and the reorganization of the Ottoman society. And so it includes, just reading down through the list, paper banknotes, post offices, having a national anthem and a flag. Oh, national anthem and a flag. See, that puts people together, right? Reorganizing the army into something that makes sense. They're going to have the first census. Okay, so a census is where you count everybody and find out how many people you got and where they all are. The census. They're going to pass out identity cards. They're going to abolish slavery. They're going to add more telegraphs and railroads, and they're going to decriminalize homosexuality and a whole bunch of other stuffs. So the Nationality Law of 1869, which says we don't care if you're Muslim or Christian. Anybody and everybody can be Ottoman. And so this is going to be a brand new idea for the Turkish peoples. So it's not going to help. No, okay, it does help a little bit. But basically the end of the Ottoman Empire is coming. So lots of people. And so we're going to get into this idea of not enough jobs. If you don't have enough jobs and you've got people who can't afford food, and you can't afford food, then you starve, and it's just not a good deal. You know, the Ottoman Empire was one of the most, I like the word right there on the screen, heterozygous countries in the world. You had Christians in the Balkans, the Balkan area, so we're talking about the area around Greece. You had the Shia in Iran and Iraq, you had the Sunni in Persia, you had Orthodox Christians in Armenia and Turkey, and so it was one giant ball of different religions that worked out, and that's great, but they just couldn't compete with Europe, either economically or militarily. They just couldn't compete, and so ultimately they're going to fall here. We can argue that it's a bunch of weak leaders, a whole bunch of sultans who didn't care for anything but themselves, and of course we know what happens when that happens. Laissez-faire leadership and people who only care about themselves, and the country goes, and there you go. And then economically, think about the Silk Road, where Turkey is on the Silk Road. It's between Europe and China, and so a whole bunch of cheap goods are going to flow through there, and it's going to devastate the economy. Okay, so then they're going to form a new constitution, a constitutional monarchy in 1876, and we're going to have Sultan Hamid II. He's going to be the new constitutional monarch, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be wonderful, and Turkey's going to pull itself out of the doldrums, and it's going to be, and then 2 years later in 1878, Sultan Hamid II goes, no, I don't want to be a constitutional monarch, I just want to be the Sultan, and so he's going to go back into autocracy, to dictatorship, and that's going to last all the way up to 1911, 11-ish. No, 1909. You thought you'd catch me on that, wouldn't you? 1909. All right. Oh, see, if I look at the dates right there, I would know. So this is 1908, which is not what I said before, but it is 1909. In 1908, the Young Turkish, we had the Young Turks Revolution. And so here we are 30 years later, King Sultan Muhammad II, still in power, and the Young Turks, a bunch of young guys, upcoming, and they're sick of the big dog, and so they're claiming that there's way too many spies everywhere, that Europe is totally dominating the Turks, that Muhammad II is totally not following any of his own laws, and so we're going to have the revolution of 1908 in the Ottoman Empire, and then in 1909, Sultan Muhammad II steps down. Okay. Egypt. So Egypt is part of the Sultanate of the empire there, of the Ottoman Empire. It is called the Egypt Eyalet, which is an administrative division, kind of like a state, I suppose, if you want to talk about it that way. The state of Egypt, and it was ruled by the Ottoman Empire from 1517 all the way up to 1867. So, well, there you go. And here's the deal with Egypt. Egypt is it's a pretty sizable country, right? You got the Nile River, etc., etc. And so, pretty sizable country. They had a pretty good sized army as well, the Mamluks army, and we've talked about that before. And so the Mamluks, because they were a pretty good sized military force, you could argue that Turkey never really owned Egypt. Well, certainly from the Egyptians' point of view, but the Sultan never really had power over the Egyptian army itself, and so that's why Egypt was kind of on its own, even though technically owned by the Ottomans, but and that's how that worked. And then there was a catalyst. Somebody tell the science teacher I used the word catalyst. There's a catalyst when Napoleon showed up. Here we are talking about Napoleon again. It's like this guy did some stuff. Napoleon shows up and finds the Rosetta Stone and does all that kind of stuff over there in Egypt, Suez Canal stuff, etc., etc. And because he kind of injects something different into the mix, then people are going to start going, hey, maybe we don't want to be part of the empire, the Ottoman Empire. And so we have the rise of Muhammad Ali. Not that guy, Muhammad Ali. He's going to want to take over Egypt, and he's going to want to do it without. He's going to want to form his own military, and so how he does this is that he knows that the Mamluks are in the way, so he orders Order 66. Some of you know what that is if you're Star Wars people. Order 66 on the Mamluks. And so what he does, something in my eye, sorry guys. Order 66, and so what he does is he invites, he invites the leadership of the Mamluks. All right, we're going to do this with one eye. He invites the leadership of the Mamluks up to the citadel there in Cairo, and you see the little drawing right there. You'll see it better when you look at the PowerPoint, but he invites them in and kind of blocks, as they come down the street, he blocks both edges of the street, and then he has assassins that shoot down into the square and kills everybody, kind of like the Jedis, and then when the emperor and the, oh no, never mind, that's something else. But anyway, so Muhammad Ali becomes basically the ruler of Egypt, and he has to be real careful about that because he wants to have independence in Egypt, but if he has too much independence in Egypt, then the Ottoman Empire the Sultan's going to go smash him. So he wanted to be very careful about doing that. So now we have another word called the Khedive, the Khedivate, the Khedives, the Khedivates. So this is a new idea called, it's an autonomous state. So an autonomous state is basically, you are your own country, but technically you're still owned by the Ottoman Empire. So that's what Egypt's going to become, and this is going to fall under Muhammad Ali's rule. And so he's going to refine some stuff, some reform some stuff. He's going to confiscate all private lands. Confiscate all private lands and make them government lands. He's going to reorganize the military so that it's much more formidable and much more like the European militaries. He's going to give government monopolies. He's going to be the guy that kind of starts the Egyptian cotton trade. And so, Egyptian cotton, best cotton in the world, if you ask the Egyptians. He is going to try to expand Egypt. He's going to go down into Sudan, who is minding its own business, and he's going to take over Sudan. He's going to try to invade Libya. He's going to try to invade Arabia. He's going to try to invade Cyprus, and part of the Levant. And then he's going to go into Greece. He's not going to be successful in Greece because the British are going to show up. Okay, so the Greeks are owned, at this point, they're owned by Turkey. But when Egypt invades, the British show up to defend Greece, which is kind of interesting. And so the great British, war machine, right, stops Egypt and kicks Egypt out of Greece. And so then Britain declares war on Egypt, which, that's not good for anybody, especially if you're Egyptian. And they quickly subdue Egypt, Britain does. And so Britain then takes over Egypt. And this whole time, if those of you paying attention, you're sitting there thinking, no, wait a second, because Egypt is owned by the Ottoman Empire, so if Britain, so what? Right. And so technically, here are a couple of terms for you. We have de facto and de jure. These are Latin terms. De jure means basically what is written down, what is the law, what is the rule. And the law is that Egypt is a khedivate of the Ottoman Empire. And then we have the term de facto. De facto means kind of what you think. It is, what's the actual fact? The actual fact is that Britain's running the show. So de facto, Britain is in charge. De jure, if anybody were to look it up in the rule book, well, the Ottoman Empire's in charge. But that's how that works. And that's ultimately, at the beginning of World War I, Britain is going to formally acquire Egypt. So we have our drawings here. As we've talked about, the lion represents Great Britain, and now we have a new player. Enter player 17. We have the fox. The fox, and the fox is the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish fox. And so there's the great big strong lion, and he's talking down to the fox like and no. And then here at the bottom we've got the British lion, and he's talking to all the Egyptians saying, "Hello guys, hello, cheerio." Oh, here's a cool one. So here's Great Britain, the lion, and he's standing, he's got his front two paws up on top of the alligator. Oh, do not tell Mrs. Jones I said that. I'm going to get rid of this, and you're not going to see this. You know what, I'm going to keep rolling. She's not going to watch this. So you got Great Britain right there, the lion, and he puts his hands on top of, his paws on top of a crocodile, not an alligator, a crocodile. And we know that Egypt was represented by the crocodile because it actually says Egypt on the crocodile. And then we have a lot of different players going on here. We have the donkey represents Spain, and he's looking down there going, man, alrighty. And then here at the bottom we've got the little French pug, and we've got the little Italian dog, and we've got, there's the fox for Turkey, and then a couple of other players. We have over here, we have the eagle representing Germany, and then we have the double-headed eagle representing Austria-Hungary, and then way over here on the corner, that's the bear, Russia, and he's sitting here going, interesting. So, all the different cartoon animals. Where is the American bald eagle, you ask? Yeah, we weren't really part of this yet. No, it's coming. All right, the Suez Canal. So we talked about the Panama Canal and how Teddy Roosevelt stole that. Here's the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal was built several years before the Panama Canal. There's lots of little bitty lakes in here, and so, gosh, if you look at the history of the Suez Canal, it goes way back, like almost 2,000 years that people were kind of talking about this, trying to figure out how you connect from point A to point B. Napoleon, oh, here we go, Napoleon again. So Napoleon, he shows up, and he's got his guys, and they do some surveying of the land, and his engineers say, sorry, boss, we can't do this, because if we were to dig a giant canal, a giant ditch between the Mediterranean Sea, which is up here, and the Red Sea, which is down here, if we dig a ditch between those, then Greece and Italy and Turkey and France and Spain are all going to be underwater. Because according to the French engineers, the Red Sea was about 30 feet higher than the Mediterranean Sea. So they figured if they dug a giant ditch, then all that water would flow up and then drown everybody in the Mediterranean. And some of you are thinking, wow, that's so great that Napoleon did not dig that ditch, because otherwise that would be awkward for all those Europeans and Northern Africans who would be flooded out. And then a couple of you in here are like, no, wait a second, the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea, they're all connected, right? Because the oceans, they're all connected. Because the Mediterranean Sea is going to flow out to the Atlantic, and the Red Sea flows south to the Indian Ocean, and the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean connect. And wait, isn't sea level like sea level? Like it doesn't change? Other than tides, right? But sea level is sea level everywhere in the world. For the purposes of the discussion here, sea level is sea level. And so Napoleon was wrong. Ah, well. So the French, gosh, several 60 years later, they're going to help. They're going to help. They're going to build this way after Napoleon's dead. They're going to build this. Now, unlike the Panama Canal, where you have the system of locks, where you float in there and you see how heavy the boat is, and then you can move it up and down like elevator stuff. The Suez Canal is lit, guys. No lie, it's a ditch, like just literally a ditch, because it's sand everywhere. So, and every so often they bring in these giant diggers. They just dig out the sand, because the sand flows into the water, and so it's literally a ditch. Now it's a 120-mile ditch, and in some places the ditch is almost 2 football fields long or wide, 2 football fields wide, and it's about 80 feet deep. So it's an 8-story building-ish deep. So it's a big ditch, but literally it's just a ditch. And so from traveling from point A to point B, it opened in November of 1869, and so there's this big parade of ships. They had the Emperor of Prussia and some people from France and Spain and Britain and Italy and Greece, and they all showed up. They were on their various boats, and the plan and the what's the name from Egypt. They're all going to get on these boats, and they're going to have a big party the night before in the north, in the Mediterranean Sea, and then they're all going to come down the ditch, the Suez Canal, and that's the game plan. And so it's going to be led by this big old boat. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And then some stories talk about how this little bitty French like basically sailboats, kind of snuck into the front and came down the Suez Canal first, and so the French claimed that, oh, we were the first ones in the canal. Interesting. We were the first ones in the canal. Oof, technology. So we were the first ones in the canal, but then that French boat kind of ran aground because they don't know how to steer, and so then the rest of the boats they all kind of met in the big lake kind of in the center, and they spent the night there and had a big party. And then in the morning, there's a British ship, the Dido, and it was the first one actually out of the canal. So it depends on who was the first in, who was the first ones went all the way through, that kind of stuff. The Egyptians or the French or the British, whatever. So the Convention of Constantinople says, quote, the Suez Canal, quote, can be used in time of war as in time of peace by every vessel of commerce or of war without distinction of flag. And so anybody can use it, it has been shut down couple of times during the 6-Day War. Egypt shut it down because they didn't want Israel using it. It's been shut down, most recently in 2021, that was what, March of 2021, where we had the Ever Given, is that right? Green? Ever? I think it's Ever Given. This giant cargo ship that was coming through, and it got wedged into the canal, and nobody could go up or down. It was stuck there for 10 days or something like that, 8 or 9 days, and the whole world was like, "What are we going to do?" Because, to go from the Red Sea to, let's say from New Delhi, India, to London, if you're going to use the Suez Canal, great. If you don't use the Suez Canal and you want to go from New Delhi, India to London, England, and you have to go all the way around Africa, well, that's an extra 5,000 miles. So the Suez Canal cuts off 5,000 miles trip. And so when that giant ship came in and got stuck, all these ships got, it was 2021. You guys were alive in 2021. Is that all I want to say about that? I think that's all I want to say about that. Oh, you do have to pay, kind of like the Panama Canal, and it's based on how big your ship is. Some of the biggest super tankers, they're too big because not necessarily their beam. A beam is how wide your ship is, but the draft. The draft is how much water you displace and how deep you are. Like I said, the bottom of the Suez Canal is 80 feet. But there are some big old boats out there. And in fact, some of the boats, if they're super heavy, then they sink too low. And so what they'll do is they'll unload some of their cargo, put them on smaller ships, have the smaller ships take the cargo up or down, and then when the big ship gets through, then they put the cargo back on the ship, and that way it's not so. All right. Well, anyway, that's all we want to know about the Suez Canal. Now we're moving on to China. All right, so as last we left, we had the Ming Dynasty. So we had the Yuan Dynasty with the Mongols and the Ming Dynasty. And so the Ming Dynasty is about to come apart here. So we have Nurhaci, the Khan of the Great Jin. And so he's going to have some problems with the Ming Dynasty. In fact, he says the 7 grievances. And he talks about how the Ming Dynasty killed his father and his grandfather and all this kind of stuff. So he has the 7 grievances against the Ming Dynasty. And so he forms his own armies and makes it very organized. And so here he has the 8 banners, the yellow and the white and the blue and all the banners down here, and he organizes them into 300 households per company, 5 companies per battalion, 10 battalions per banner. So there's a lot of people in his army, and he's going to come in and he's going to smack around the Ming. Actually, he's going to cause some problems for the Ming. He's going to cause some problems. What am I going to say? What was I going to say about that? The Ming Dynasty. So he's going to cause some problems. The Ming the Ming Dynasty, while they're fighting off the Jins, they're having their own kind of issues as well. Some of the soldiers in the Ming Dynasty, they have been marrying Manchu. They've been marrying their daughters off to the Manchus. Manchus are far Western Chinese, so a whole different group. And so the Manchus are not very happy with the Qing anyway. I'm sorry, with the Ming anyway. And so when the Jin are attacking the Ming, and then the Ming say to the Manchus, hey, help us out. And the Manchus are like, sure, we'll help you out. And then they attack the Ming also. It's a whole big hullabaloo. And so ultimately the Ming Dynasty is going to fall, and we're going to have the Qing Dynasty. And this is the last dynasty of China before it starts getting crazy in China. And so this is the Qing Dynasty, and that's going to start in 1644. It's going to go all the way up to basically early 1900. Okay, the Qing social, this is where we actually start having pictures, so this is pretty cool. The Qing Emperor referred to either as the Emperor or the Great Khan, depending on who's talking. Because we still have some of those holdovers who still are thinking Mongolian, that kind of stuff. Neo-Confucian ideas are back. The idea that, remember that there's a place for everybody, and everybody in their place. And so you be the best farmer you can be, and you be the best merchant you can be, and you be the best prince you can be. So Confucian ideas, and that education is number one, and the scholar gentry are back in charge. So there you go. The Qing are not have their own little civil war stuff going on. We have the revolt of the three feudatories, and those are the holdovers from the Ming, but ultimately the Qing are going to establish power. Okay, new topic, kind of. Opium. Drugs. So, how do we start? The British were losing a lot of money in China. China was making all this porcelain, all this silk, all this stuff, and the Great Silk Road trade, right? Britain was, man, a lot of their money, a lot of their silver was going to China, and Britain realized, man, the trade imbalance is way out of control because they're not buying anything from us. So we need to come up with something that the Chinese will buy from us. That way we get some of that silver back. And the silver is not just going one direction. So it turns out in India, which is a colony of Britain, in India they have this flower, the poppy, and a particular brand of poppy, the sap of this poppy is can be used for drugs. And well, the short version is opium. And so the British took the sap and they converted it into opium, and then they began to sell it to China. Well, not officially. They would use drug smugglers, and they would give the opium to the drug smugglers, and the drug smugglers. And then pretty soon a whole bunch of people are making a whole bunch of illegal money based on drugs. Opium. The Chinese middle class and the upper classes, they got hooked on this stuff. Hooked because of the smoke anyway. And so a whole bunch of money is going to come back into Britain. So this is going to be great for the British. When the Qing government realizes, wait a second, my people are all getting hooked on drugs. We're going to put a stop to this. And so they're going to actually send a letter to the Queen Victoria, and we're going to read that, in fact, on Wednesday. And they're going to say, "Hey, Your Majesty, you can't force drugs on our people. Will you stop?" I wonder what Her Majesty is going to say about that. Oh, they're going to go to war over that. So we have the war. We have two opium wars. So the first Opium War is basically China versus England, and England, which basically says, no, China, you will do drugs, and we're going to force you to do that. And so the Chinese, because they were just outmatched by the British technology, they're going to lose this one. And so we call these, the next couple of treaties here with the Chinese, we call them the unequal treaties, certainly from the Chinese point of view, because it all goes south for the Chinese on this. This is all bad. So the Treaty of Nanking is 1842, it's the end of the first Opium Treaty, and the Chinese had to pay Britain $21 million, and then they had to give up Hong Kong, so the little bitty island of Hong Kong, just off the coast of China. They're going to give Hong Kong to Britain as reparations. And in fact, so that was 1841, 1842. Britain's going to own Hong Kong for the next 100 and forever years, up to July 1st, 1997. And then it's going to, Britain's going to give Hong Kong back to the Chinese in 1997. And then, part of the unfair treaty, Britain gets extraterritoriality. Ooh, it's like I practiced that word, extraterritoriality in China, which means this, that if you're a British citizen, you don't necessarily have to follow the Chinese laws. The Chinese laws don't necessarily apply to you if you have extraterritoriality. That's not good for the Chinese. And then they're going to have the second Opium War, where China's going to try to really kick the British, and it's not going to happen, because the British and the French are going to get involved, and it's going to be even worse for the Chinese. And so let's see, this is the Treaty of Tianjin. They're going to cede Kowloon to the British, which is another small little area. China's going to be forced to have freedom of religion, which is going to have we're going to have a whole bunch of Christians. Christianity is going to bloom in China for a little bit. It says and other stuff there, other stuff. China has to agree that the drugs are legal. That drugs are legal. Opium drugs. So opium, right? So here's the deal: the sap of the poppy contains 12% morphine. You're like, oh, morphine! I've heard of morphine. In the United States, we give morphine. Morphine is a drug that basically causes your pain sensors to short circuit. So in the United States, we use morphine for the three major things we use morphine for in the United States: heart attacks, people who are suffering heart attacks, people who have kidney stones, and then pregnancy. Those are the three biggest things in the United States for morphine. Named after Morpheus. Anybody get the reference? Morpheus? That's fine. What do I want to say about that? Nah, that's all I want to say about that. So if you take the morphine and then you add a little bit to it, then you get some interesting stuff like hydrocodone and codeine, and then ultimately heroin. And heroin is twice as potent as morphine. So people who take morphine, they get sleepy. Their pain sensors turn off, and their blood pressure drops, sometimes precipitously, which means that's bad. You're too low of a blood pressure. Another negative effect of morphine and or heroin is that your breathing slows down. So you have, what would that word be? So hyperventilation is when you too fast. Hypoventilation is when you're breathing too slow. If you breathe too slow, what happens? Buildup of carbon dioxide, and that's not good for anybody. But this is not a biology lesson. The short version is, don't do drugs, kids. But not the Chinese. The Chinese are going to do this, and or the British, and or the Americans, in fact. So we're going to have this for several years. We had these clubs called the opium dens, and so these people, and you can see them in the photos here. When you get the PowerPoint up close and personal, you'll see these people, and they all look like they are well, they all look like they're dead basically, but they're not. They've been smoking heroin and or opium and or morphine and then they're all just lying there in their state of their drug-induced state of whatever, of just catatonia, I suppose. But we had those in America as well, opium dens. Not as popular as what they were in China. Okay. Oh, here's something. Here's fun. So Frank Elbaum, he writes this story called The Wizard of Oz. It's a book, guys. Feel free to read the book. There's actually a book out there. There's actually several books. There's the Tin Man of Oz and the Wizard of Oz and there's a series of books. But anyway, it's all big satire. The entire book's a big satire, and so we have the different characters represent different groups. So obviously, like the Scarecrow represents farmers, and the Tin Man represents industry, and then you have the lion. The lion, right? The lion represents Britain, and you've got Dorothy, etc., etc. And then there's a scene and on top of that, you've got in the movie they're ruby slippers, but in the book they're silver shoes, and so you have the silver shoes walking on the golden road, the gold road, the yellow brick road, going to the Emerald City, and it's all this big illusion, it's all big satire. And at one point, Britain and Dorothy, the lion and Dorothy, they're running across the field of poppies, and the witch causes it to snow. And what happens to the lion and Dorothy? Poppies, poppies. The two of them fall asleep. And so how the Opium Wars and the British Lion and okay. Go watch The Wizard of Oz. I'll get you my pretties and your dog too. All right. So we're almost done, like 3 more slides. Maybe 4 more slides. So we have the Taiping Rebellion, also known as the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom Movement. So there's this guy, his name is Hong Xiquan, and in 1850 he claimed that he was Jesus Christ, Jesus's younger brother, and he's going to lead the Christians in China, and they're going to take over China. And so he forms the society called the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom Movement, and it becomes wildly popular in 1850, and it's going to go for about 14 years, but it is very violent. It's very violent. The Chinese government does not want the Christians to take over, and so they're going to send out the military, and it is going to be violent for the next 14 years. Ultimately, in 1864, Hong Xiquan is going to be, his forces are going to be reduced eventually, and he's going to die. Some people say he dies because he eats some bad vegetables, but regardless, and or tries to commit suicide by eating raw food or something weird. But regardless, when he's captured, they take his body and they cut him up. They cut him up and they cremate him, and they take his ashes and they put his ashes inside this cannon, and they blow the cannon so his ashes are scattered everywhere, just to make sure that he doesn't come back. Right. But the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom Movement. So the Taiping Rebellion is the 4th most deadly war in the history of the world. They had between 20 and 30 million people die in this rebellion. And now you're like, whoa. 20 to 30 million people who died in this. That's how many people died during these 14 years of Christians and the Chinese trying to get into it. And so, can you name the number one? The war in world history, the most people died? You got it? All right, so number one is World War II. World War II, 75, 80 million people. And then you're like, hey, World War One, right? No, World War One's like number 9 on the list. Number 2 would be Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan, 45, 50 million people. Number 3, the Chinese wars, Chinese civil wars, several dynasties ago. And so the Taiping Rebellion is number 4. And now you're like, okay, well, what about the United States? How about something like the Civil War? Hey, the Civil War, how many people, where on the list are we of most deadly wars of all time? Guys, the American Civil War comes in at number 49. The 49th. 49. There were 48 more bloody wars than the American Civil War in world history. Wow. Because there were like between 600,000 and 1 million people killed in the American Civil War, depending on how you count that. So that's a lot of people, but compared to, okay. So here are the Boxers, the Boxer Rebellion. So the Boxers are kind of interesting. They're anti-Christian. They're Chinese, a group of Chinese guys, and they're anti-Christian, anti-Christian, but they're also basically everybody non-Chinese. So anti-ethnic, and anybody not Chinese. I know what I'm saying. And so they called themselves the Righteous and Harmonious Fists. The Righteous and Harmonious Fists. But I guess that was too hard for the rest of the world to say, so we just called them the Boxers, because they're based, martial arts. We just called them the Boxers. Anyway, the Boxer Rebellion. So the Boxer Rebellion is going to try to kick out any more Christians that were still there after the Taiping Rebellion. We have the Boxer Rebellion, and then anybody else that the Boxers don't like. So at one point, the Boxers are going to trap a whole bunch of Europeans and/or Americans, and Americans in Beijing, in this little neighborhood, and they're going to surround them for 55 days. And so then we have a group of, we're going to have a group of European countries, France, England, Denmark, Russia, Germany, United States. There's a group of 8 countries. They're going to come in and they're going to smack the Boxers around and say, no, 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 you be nice, you be nice. And so then China's going to have to sign another treaty that is incredibly unfair from the point of view of the Chinese, where they have to pay 450 million basically silver coins, 450 million silver coins, which is actually more money than the Chinese government makes in a year. They had to pay 450 million of these coins to the 8 different countries, and so they gave them 39 years to pay off the debt. Goodness, the Boxer Rebellion. So there you famous drawing. You've got the Chinese guy at the top, and he's like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And everybody else is splitting up. They're splitting up the China. Here's your last slide for the day. This is Sun Yat-sen, and we're going to kick off with. We're about to kick off with a brand new concept here in China, and so Sun Yat-sen, revolutionary, and he's going to be the Qing Dynasty is going to fall apart here because of the Boxers and all that kind of stuff. So Sun Yat-sen, he's going to form the next revolution, and he's going to form the first Republic of China, the ROC, the Republic of China. So, and he's going to try to get a whole bunch of different groups together and kind of form a political bloc, including with the Kuomintang and the communists. And yes, I think this is the first time I'm saying communists in this class. We're going to get there because it's coming. And so Sun Yat-sen, he's going to push the three principles of people: the nationalism, democracy, and free trade capitalism. Wow. Well, that sounds great. Nationalism, democracy, and capitalism. What could possibly go wrong with China after this? stay tuned for the next exciting episode of whatever we're doing next week. What are we doing next week? Hey, there are your 5 themes. 6 themes if you add technology on there. But gender, social ideas, government, economics, and human versus environment and technology. Suez Canal does most of that. But the Opium Wars also, you can do all that with the Opium Wars. Okay, there you go. And we are out of here. Be good, everybody.